Hi, everyone, and welcome again to CircuitCast. I'm here with Curtis Hunter. Curtis is the CEO and one of the founders of Boardera Software Inc. Boardera was founded based on an industry need for next generation technologies to reduce the time required to get board designs onboarded, quoted, into production at manufacturing facilities. This brings an increased sales volume and velocity to those manufacturers' pipelines. Curtis comes with a background in computer engineering, computer programming. Curtis is a nearly 20-year veteran in the technology development domain. And today we're going to dig in a little bit to hear his founder story, get a peek inside what the day-to-day life of this technology CEO looks like, and hear his insight about trends and influences in the industry. And without further ado, I'm going to turn that over to you, Curtis. I'm sure that the audience is going to be eager to hear your founding story. They're always exciting and interesting stories. So if we can start there and learn a little bit about your role at Boardera and how that fits into the bigger picture. And then after, we'll take that peek inside on your day-to-day. Sound good?
That sounds great. Thanks for having me, John. I really appreciate it. Uh, our founding story is perhaps not super duper exciting. Ultimately, the founding team had been owning and operating an assembly shop for circuit boards. So, with respect to taking the fabrication and building out a final product for highly technical use cases like emergency vehicles, aircraft, etc. And ultimately, under that roof, we just couldn't keep up to the inquiries, the RFQs, or the requests for quotes, or the three simple questions. Can you build this? How much will it cost? And when can I have it? So a prototype was starting to be built with a brilliant engineer on staff to try and automate that onboarding process a little bit. The intake from a customer being a designed package and translating that into something that somebody can easily quote and respond to those three questions, which today is extremely difficult. The margins are super tight for assemblers, and I think we're all aware of the chaotic supply chain challenges which apply here. Just a note for others not super familiar, each one of these projects is custom. So the interesting bit of this industry is buying customer as the designer of the product. And those manufacturing have to put all the pieces together, figure out where all of those components come from in materials and provide that answer to them with a competitive price. And that process is extremely difficult and is very typically done manually with the help of some spreadsheets that have been developed over a period of time within the contract manufacturer. So in 2020, we decided to take that prototype and build a quoting platform that could automate most of these tasks and connect all the contract manufacturers. And that really is our vision, is to help contract manufacturers deliver product to market faster and cheaper by applying automation, and not just software automation, but automation in general. And our current mission is really to automate that quoting process. There is a ton of effort and overhead applied to answer those three simple questions. And a lot of the folks managing and operating these contract manufacturers have really difficult time closing those deals. So if you could imagine scaling up a large staff of really highly skilled individuals to try and dig into each one of these inquiries and provide a response, only to find the close rates 10 to 20%. So there's a scaling challenge there, and that's really the founding story and why we think this problem is really important to solve in the industry.
When you founded the company, maybe you can talk a little bit about, what was the most difficult thing, on that first day when you sort of turned the lights on and said, today we're Boardera. Talk a little bit about those first couple of months and that exercise.
Sure. Outside factors were interesting. The business was founded 3 days into the lockdown for COVID, at least as it applied in Canada. So as you could imagine, that was a really difficult time and a big shift for everybody, both professionally and otherwise, to make that commitment to start a business. And then one could ask themselves, how do we build a software engineering team with all of this niche expertise in that state? So one of the biggest challenges first day was to make a commitment and pull together all the founders' experience in building and managing remote engineering teams and execute. very quickly on that. So I think that was one of the biggest interesting challenges with the timing of all of this. That
Just on that topic, before we move on, do you think that in some ways the lockdown and everybody being forced into this remote operation mode, and your team coming already with an experience of building these remote teams, do you think that actually worked in your favor a little bit?
Absolutely. I think our ability to make a quick decision and execute quickly and use that to our advantage. So the concept of bringing in excellent talent from other regions is is a benefit. It's an open door. So we were able to execute and apply that to our benefit. I will say for our listeners though, John, after several years of experimenting, both before this happened and through this experience, there is nothing like solving a highly technical challenge than with your peers in a room and a whiteboard. It truly is the best way to go from a software perspective. From a business management perspective, there are other factors at play, but there's nothing like sitting in a room with brilliant people and solving
The
difficult
real
problems.
time dynamic mind share, right, of having everybody in the same room and just riffing off of ideas, right?
That's right. That's right. One more
Go
challenge
ahead.
I wanted to talk about, John, was a real need to analyze this concept of a prototype. So a software prototype that was built and analyze, break it down. How do we rebuild this in a very scalable way with everything else in consideration, and that includes IP. So that was an interesting first step, was to take our time and analyze all of that, both from an IP infringement protection and scalable build. Absolutely. There's benefit to being cautious, but at the same time, one of the amazing, brilliant things about being a startup is you can bust through red tape and barriers and go at lightning speed. And I really, really have enjoyed that.
Okay, so here we are half a decade later. Give us a little peek at what, a day-to-day, the day in the life of Curtis Hunter looks like as the CEO of Boardera today.
Well, as a smaller organization, so we all wear several hats, and there's good benefit to that in staying connected and staying involved. But my day to day goes from speaking with customers on a regular basis to analyzing at the story level the product development that we're working on, just to be familiar and provide feedback and input as to how we execute on a specific problem space. I think that generally describes my day to day.
So you mentioned customers, and you mentioned in your earlier discussion a little bit about the customers. Maybe we can dig in a little further on the nature of your customers. Who are the people that are using your product? Who are the decision makers that encourage those people to use your product? Because they may not be the same person, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, that's a great point, John. So first off, the direction we've headed currently is to provide a white labeled platform that services PCB fabricators as well as assemblers. So those two groups do two different things. And for any of the listeners unfamiliar, that the fabricators typically build the bare board and the assemblers may do both, but they ultimately components procure and put the components on that circuit board to build a final product in the form of a circuit board for the end customer. So our product is sold to both of those two parties, and they brand it and utilize it in two different ways. One is an automation tool to dump designs into and automate the quoting process as a back office tool. And the other is a storefront. So their customers can self serve great information about their own design, right down to pricing and any supply chain challenges. Think about Shopify for the circuit board industry, but again, calling out the difference. It's their design. They're dumping in their own invention and getting details back with respect to manufacturing.
Well, that's actually really helpful. It gives people a bit of a view. So we talked about circuit board manufacturers, we talked about surface mount technology assemblers, and probably even box build EMS type manufacturers, right?
That's right.
So when we think about, sort of your current state of operations or even the last call it the last 18 months, because things change pretty quickly these days. What do you think are really the biggest obstacles or the things that are most frustrating in terms of having people recognize the value in your technology and being able to grow your company?
Great question, John. And I think it alludes to a response that applies to a prior question. I think the industry itself is well aware that when it comes to certain technologies, it's very slow to adopt. In this particular case, we're finding the quoting process is quite old, archaic, using old tools built by engineers for engineers that are difficult to wield, so to speak. And for us, it's a really easy conversation to have with our target customers at the exec level. This concept of investment in an unscalable model to respond to these RFQs with low or mediate or close rates is a really easy discussion. I think where it becomes difficult is for those on the floor who are being asked to adopt a new process, change the way they've been doing things. And one could speculate it has something to do with this feeling that automation is replacing us or replacing certain skilled individuals in entirety. And I just want to comment a little bit on that as one of our top challenges, and B, not our intention, nor do I believe it's the intention of similar software companies looking to automate. I think it's important to understand, AI specific to this industry and others is not ready to replace individuals. It's really about automating those mundane tasks that don't need human intellect to take inputs and provide an intelligent decision at the other end. With respect to research and looking up websites and data sheets and information about all of those things to feed in as those inputs, that's a great example of one of those mundane tasks. Or manually clicking on an object and inspecting it visually in order to determine an A/B scenario is something that can be automated and provide a human direct access to the result, essentially. So circling back and summarizing, the biggest challenge is on the ground level, adopting new processes and change in general, specific to, I would say, the manufacturing industry and not just specific to circuit board manufacturing.
Do you have any thoughts on how to message to that community in a way that helps them see more rapidly the value proposition of being able to work on the highly technical tasks that they're actually trained and skilled at, as opposed to spending their day working on the other tasks that they've kind of been doing all along, but feel like it fills up their day?
Absolutely. I think we've learned a lot through our journey, speaking with customers and potential customers and working with partners about how to create a user experience or the feeling that this is a friendly tool versus I'm here to dump a project in and pass off a quote to my boss for approval. Uh, Keeping it simple is bringing them along for a ride with a rich user experience that helps them understand the role that they're playing and help them understand where we really want their input and decisions to occur. Um, and this is, I believe, the trend across the board with AI is it's not trusted in general to make really important decisions, especially when we have scenarios where these business decisions result in potentially a loss in profit or that sort of thing. It's just not trusted enough. So how do you present what's being automated and the decisions that are being made by a system producing that automation in a way that's helpful and reassures the individual utilizing it and making those decisions in the end. And that's something we've spent a lot of time on building and refining over the last few years. So it truly speaks to those using it and not just the exec who wants to save a bunch of money and go faster.
That's awesome. I think, it sounds like you've really got to the nut of the problem in terms of, at least in terms of, delivering your product and growing your marketplace. And I just want to shift gears a little bit and talk about that. when you think about growing your marketplace, like everybody, right? You're running a business, so a business at some point has to make money. I got to get revenue and so forth. When you're looking to grow your revenue, what are the metrics that you as a CEO are looking at in your organization to tell whether you're headed in the right direction or not, or you're doing the right things?
That's a great question. I think there's lots of different metrics, but most of our metrics start, at least from my perspective, based on the value it's adding from a customer's perspective. So I'll start there and talk about how those translate to the business itself. But this particular product is meant to do a few things. One is to reduce the amount of effort or labor spent creating a response to a single RFQ. So one of the measurements of success or value for us is how much time can we spend or save, I should say, with respect to the effort needed to get that response out. The second important metric for us is the time to respond. So this is one of the most complex industries in the sense that a single product has materials or products from potentially hundreds of other suppliers globally. And knowing those challenges we have in place today, that is a difficult thing to commit to, which is a response to that RFQ in a short period of time. Some of the ways to protect those margins is to be super duper careful. So you get on the phone, you start talking to suppliers or potentially distributors that can get the materials you need, but you're going to wait on their response before committing to your customer that you can get it at a specific cost and protect your margin and delivery dates. So this concept of time to deliver a response is the other key metric for us that drives value. And the product that we've built is intended to automate a lot of those processes, and not by guessing, but by interacting with those vendors and distributors directly in a more efficient way and potentially automating all of their responses as well. So pulling it all together in a much shorter period of time. So there's effort required as well as time to respond. And for us, those are the two biggest metrics to increase the value of what our product is delivering. We're definitely in a phase of proving our value at a lower fee than we are about pure focused on revenue. So those are two major metrics that we're using to drive success.
When you're thinking about your own organization and you're saying, how do I grow my business? What are those metrics? Are you looking at, how many people are in my sales funnel? How fast are we bringing them in? How many sales reps are generating results? What percentages? These sorts of things. How many customers do you actually think are out there?
Great question. I'll work backwards from that. I think based on our analysis, there are about 5,500 globally. So it is very niche, and each of those are niche within themselves. I do believe about 10% of that number is obtainable for us, which is somewhere around 550, where we are a good fit as the product sits today. So some of the key metrics we utilize to define success is about that particular pipeline and getting them into a state of interest. So validating the product market fit is super important at this stage of the business. So a metric referring to we have no need for something like that, or that's not a problem we need to solve, versus tell me more is an important metric. And we utilize some of our sales and pipeline processes to measure that. The other big one for us is for those who are ready to move forward and have a proposal in their hands, how many are won versus lost? And that speaks to, again, the value of the problem, where we sit as a company with our product and how it solves their problem. And it also tells some stories about potential competition as well. So those are the two really interesting ones for us today in the state of the business.
Yeah, I think it's important that, because the nature of your niche, right? It's a bit of a different perspective than some others might have. So I think it's good to hear about those. When you think about, your company, you try to look forward. What's your vision? What does the next sort of 12 months look like, both from a tech advancement and from a business advancement?
Yeah, from a business advancement perspective, it's getting beyond that startup look and feel. So that's a specific revenue target number and impact we're having on existing customers. From a technology perspective, it's a little more exciting. We've talked a little bit about the circuit board industry specifically and automating this particular process. But this concept of being able to iterate on hardware very, very quickly and cheaply is our vision. And there's many ways in which we can execute on that. And the baseline for that technology is exactly what we're building and investing in today. If you can imagine a world where hardware companies or OEMs building toasters can iterate on their products as fast as they do today, the better, the more efficient they can be, the better the products for their end customers and consumers will be. But more importantly, I think it will drive a healthier global competition with respect to this particular industry. I don't think it's a surprise that most of this stuff today is engineered in Asia Pac. So this need or this drive to reshore manufacturing is super strong. Without getting into politics, the political temperature is driving the need to secure our IP, the need to reshore manufacturing, and of course, applying even more pressure to today's supply chain with respect to tariffs and tariff management, which can be a nightmare for everybody. So, to summarize all of that, John, I would say our vision doesn't stop with automated quoting tool with respect to circuit board manufacturing.
Awesome. Curtis, it's actually terrific. I could probably continue on all day. I do want to just recap a little bit. You've given us a lot of information to think about. You've given us, your founder story, which I think actually lived up to expectations as much as you were humble about it. Starting during the impetus of COVID must have been a challenge for sure. You've shared some great insights on the industry. Give us a bit of a look at what your day to day and what your product is doing. So I do think the audience is going to be quite excited to see this. Can you remind us again how we find you, how people contact you if they are hearing this and they're thinking, my gosh, I need to have this right now. What do they do?
Absolutely. For those viewing, I'm sure you have a link to my bio. If not, we can add one, John, and it's www.boardera.ca, BOARDERA.ca.
Terrific. Thank you.